I really wanted to use all the knowledge and all the power I have to make sure that sustainability finds a reason or a path or a channel. So if I would have a recommendation for ourselves, there are so many young people, men or women, which would definitely change everything that feels now should change faster. We sell a dream. We sell something which delivers always the picture of protect your playground because you use it, and on the other hand, we finance our own salary because we sell. So the advice which you asked me for was
in this Sports and Outdoor Mentors episode, I chat with Kim Scholze, the co-CEO of Sympatex. Kim has over 25 years of experience in the sports and outdoor sector, having worked for iconic businesses including Salomon, Nytro and ISPO. With responsibilities ranging from sales, marketing and product creation, nevertheless, her career's red thread and passion is sustainability, a topic in which she now plays an influential leadership role in the industry. I hope you enjoy the episode. If you do, please like and comment, and if you haven't already, please subscribe. So, Kim, before we kind of get into your history and your career, your background, I just first of all wanted to know what would you like the audience to maybe get out of this discussion?
You asked that question right at the beginning. Wow.
Yeah.
It's different than I thought. Let me think. How wonderful, inspiring it could be to work together, to have the right team buddies in your work life and also in your personal life, which understand what you tick for. And I'm happy to share whatever I can to make people passionate, inspired, and taking care for each other in which kind of field, wherever.
Great. So I'm interested. I think you've now spent almost 27 or around 27 years in the sporting goods industry.
You're better informed than I am.
Well, you tell me if I'm wrong.
Math thing. I started studying in German Sports University in Cologne, which was 93.
Okay, so in fact over 30 years then.
Yeah, but in that first pieces of my job, that was not really related to the sporting good industry because I was taking care for other things.
Yeah.
Business related in terms of I wanted to be an economist for different languages and so on. And this is where I started from. But then together with this passion I had for my own sports activity, which was beach volleyball, snowboarding, skiing and stuff, the sport university brought me more to the other part, which was a journalist at the beginning.
Absolutely.
In sports.
And so you've said there already very clearly that it's always kind of been a passion for you, sports. So, but where did that come from? Where did that passion originate from? Was that from your parents or from some kind of other influence?
I would have loved to ask myself the same question before to be prepared, because it always has two sides for me. The one thing is, and I always discussed that with my mom, if there is a passion which leads to do what you do and say what you do and do what you love, then it's like a huge thing on make sure that the day in 24-hour delivers everything you need to. But I think it was part of my parents' life which brought me to the mountains early enough, but also stand for what you do in terms of authenticity. So the passion for me has two sides. It's not always the best thing.
Okay, interesting.
So, I try to keep my answers short in this case. You can ask more.
No, but I'm interested. So why? That's really interesting. So why do you think sometimes maybe it's not always the best thing, to be working from a passionate point of view?
It has always. So I'm living with 3 kids in the city center of Munich, and the passionate side for being a loving mom, wonderful, passionate in everything I do in private life as well as in sports as well as in business, is always all balls in the air. And the passionate side behind that is how to handle, judge, and also struggle with the thin line where it makes sense or where it's 80-20 method or whatever. So it always has both sides, because everything I love in terms of working together with people is if they are passionate, but of course there is always the focused and centered thing behind it, which need to make sense in the daily life.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So normally I ask this question much later in the interview, but as you've already touched on it, I always ask, most of the people that I'm interviewing have multiple hats, multiple responsibilities, as you do. You're running your own podcast. You obviously have a very senior role, so I think now co-CEO at Sympatex, as well as overseeing marketing, sales and sustainability. And so you've just shared that you're a mum of 3 kids. So how do you find the good balance? So maybe the first question is, do you find a good balance? And then if you do,
the other ones.
Okay. So it's tough.
Recently, yesterday, I had the funny thing of having a conversation to a very good buddy, and we discussed, how far you interrupt me if I'm too long in my story.
No problem.
Finding the right balance, for example, in the case of mobility. So I live in the city center. I had 3 years no car after always riding VW buses because it's kind of part of my passion being outdoors, etc. I changed that system 5 or 6 years ago using the car sharing because it's right over the street and sustainability reasons, etc. After Corona or in Corona, the car sharing models were reduced in the city center. So that was not so easy to do that with my outdoor passion with the kids. So I changed to a car, which was a Mini. This Mini had an accident with my oldest daughter on Sunday. So this is nearly over. I also love riding bikes. So I had this leasing model from my company, which we run for every employee. Yeah. I got 2 fully downhill bikes stolen in the last 4 months on the street, which is like Leopold Street in Munich. Everybody who knows Munich knows that it's like not the best place to steal bikes, but they did 2 times. So this is all in 4 months, where I'm not sure on the mobility concept, but this is an example on how do I balance things, because normally everybody around me would say, how can that happen to anybody? Are you sure that you do not maybe forgot your bike somewhere? So, and this is one of the examples, which of course I do jokes on. Yeah. But according to how's time management for the kids, how's time management for being one of 2 CEOs. So you touched it. It's my role for marketing and sales, and we share. So Rüdiger Fox is also CEO. We share everything, and he's for operations and finance, and everything overlaps. And this is the best thing for me to work in a kind of tandem. But of course, it always needs a very straight path for being focused. So I think sometimes I feel well in managing because that is the best I can get of 24 hours. But of course, I think the system sometimes need to work around me because it's so much. So that's trying to answer concretely. Did I?
Yeah. But I'm just thinking your transport, your mobility story.
Mobility issue is not solved.
Wow, I think perhaps you need to start just walking everywhere.
And you know
Cars and bikes are off.
And it got the funniest point yesterday, because when I was planning the trip here to Cambridge, where we are right now, European Outdoor Summit, it was in between doors because I was traveling so much in the last days and weeks. And then I realized, okay, I rented the car because I thought I can take some other buddies from the airport London to here to Cambridge. And then I was alone, I was late, and I realized it's the other way of it's left hand. Yeah. So I thought, okay, this is now the highest point of mobility issue.
Absolutely. Wow.
But I managed, so anyhow.
You're here and you're safe. And your daughter's okay?
Yeah, she's okay. Yeah? It's just the car, and it's just...
Okay. Yeah. Okay, good. Well, look, so we already jumped quite ahead there to Sympatex, but let's go back a little bit. So you already mentioned that after your studying, you were doing some work. I think you were an editor for some snowboard press. I think you were a snowboard instructor at one point. And then I think in 2001, you joined Salomon, actually in a sales role.
You're pretty well prepared.
I try. Well, also because, I spent 5 years at Salomon as well, a little bit later.
Yeah, I remember, yeah.
But so it caught my eye. And that seemed to be probably the first role where it was more of a sales role, whereas other things were maybe more media or marketing, or obviously, working with people in terms of instructing snowboard. So how did you find that transition into sales in that period at Salomon?
So for the first jobs I did when I started with my studies, it was on, of course, being like an outdoor teacher for skiing, snowboarding, etc. I used to be like a short term in the national team for snowboarding, only on race, not on the cool freestyle, but on race. Okay. And in that time, when I studied, I already did like a parallel trainership for being a journalist, and that was, I studied in Cologne, and this trainer thing was in Hamburg.
Okay.
But the media house closed after 1 year, the magazine, which was Sports by that time it was named, and I moved to Snowboarder MBM to Munich.
Okay.
And from that one to Powderhausen, and Powderhausen was the first media house having this kind of digitalization because they had the powder alert. So you received an SMS if there was somebody somewhere snowing.
Cool. Yeah.
Wonderful thing. And then in that time, I already felt like, okay, there is something in the industry which I would like to cover. And Salomon by that time brought out the first apparel collection.
Yeah.
And that was the first season. And I was 22 or something, 23, I don't know. And it felt like combining things which I know if it's Salomon as a brand and which really transfers something which is so new, and they had the first soft shell as an outer layer, so I was into passion as well, and this was the reason. And by that time I was already a team rider of Nytro snowboards.
Okay.
And all the rest, so I had of course the passionate role for loving hard goods and loving everything which stands for an athlete, and also the sales role. So, and this is the reason why directly after Salomon I moved back to Nytro snowboards.
Yeah, exactly. And so 7 years at Nytro, and when you moved, you then, I think, were in marketing and communication roles. So I'm interested, when you look back at that time at Salomon in sales, were you able to take any learnings that you had from that time when you were in sales into your role with Nytro from a marketing and communications point of view? Did that kind of help? Did you see value in that?
I absolutely. And it's wonderful that I may have the time now to remember, because when I start with new employees, I always try to track the kind of personality that where do I have my own history on delivering whatever. And Salomon was on one side as wonderful as I said, because of the passionate clothing, apparel, new steps, and all the sales meeting were like, we were given all the hard goods and needed to test everything in the few days. So everything was like, wow, it was so huge and belonged to Adidas. And the other side of that was, it was a corporate giving straight rules on how to feedback, when to feedback, what is appropriate, what not. So I had like my issues in that time, because what I was about for first time being a rep, having in the first 3 or 4 months, the whole apparel team from Salomon left. So I was the one quite young, unexperienced in sales, having whole Germany. So apart from 90,000 kilometers in a year, it was also, so it was wonderful for me, because it was like a hard training aspect. And as I was raised close to Hanover, I do have non-dialect in German. Okay. So having also the south part of Germany and some stores in Austria, they did not really take me for. So, and also, so that was, I needed to have as knowledgeable and passionate sales personality as possible. And also in that time it was Sport Shack and all the print catalogs and all the budgets on brands, and trying to get a good cooperation between hard goods and soft goods and apparel and footwear and so on. So I was really trained in a very fast period of getting to know everything, which I still use in the good and in the bad.
Okay. And that's what you were able to then take away to implement during your time at Nytro? I do not know, I would not say, because the guys which I worked with already knew everything, because their distribution for Germany was the most professional I ever experienced, and they are still in there. It's Markus Luca and Florian Grael, and they are running everything around that one. The chances I had on presenting to key accounts or implementing faster ways for how can communication be usable for sales, or how can we influence design, how can we change sales progresses globally, etc. That was what I was able to do there and all the time. Okay. And so that's really interesting what you said about the Nytro organization and how professional it was and what a good job they were doing. So maybe then I flipped the question. So looking back at that time, what have you maybe taken away from that time that you've kind of carried forward in your career later on? Anything that stands out? Yeah, both sides again. One, and I'll tell Florian that I tell the story. At one time he said,
Kim, it's really exhausting working with you. 10 whatevers, huge ideas, 2 are good. And that was so, oh. Well, and I took it, but in that time I took it like, okay, this is not really a good outcome. And of course I carried this kind of, we had a really close relationship in everything we did business-wise for all the settings and all the stores and so on. So I still feel it when I speak with employees, or if I'm the trainer, or if I'm the coach, or try to reflect myself. Am I over-exaggerating any idea which has no sense, or is it the right intuition?
Yeah.
So this is what I carried on. And of course, in the good sense, high professionality always leads to a better self-authenticity. So if I lack something, I try to improve or get knowledge across to the others, or even say if I'm not good enough, so that I need something. This is out of that time.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. And as I think I already mentioned, so you spent pretty much 7 years at Nytro, which actually I think, at least for now, is the business that you were at for the longest. So what is it that you obviously felt really good there, and maybe you've somehow already touched on this, but why was that time for you obviously something that made you feel so good, and that you stayed there for a reasonable amount of time, at least compared to, let's say,
to the others
today, you know?
Yeah. For I would lie if I would leave that fact or factor out that I got my 3 kids in 4 years in that time.
Okay.
And the system in Germany did not have any parental leave money or whatever, so I always continued working, but of course with a reduced time. Yeah. So in that years, I also got 3 kids.
Okay.
And
so you were pretty busy at that point in your life.
Yeah, and the dad of my kids is wonderful and supporting and everything. And so for the 7 years, it felt as if the family which we were in, we were all very, very good friends, overlapping to a high grade of business professionality, increasing also other markets with the knowledge of Germany, because that was the strongest market. We increased on a kind of apparel business. We did backpacks at the beginning in that time, so there was a lot going on. Yeah. And that the time flew.
I can imagine, I can imagine. And then I think, so after Nytro, you somehow left, let's say, the classic sporting goods industry, and you went to bench, I believe, but in a role where it looks like, and you can explain more, it looks like actually probably your role was to develop more of a sports business for them. So I'm interested, what was the motivation for you at that point to maybe look a little bit outside of the industry?
It feels really good to be asked these questions. Thank you.
No problem.
So Nytro came to a point where it did not really feel appropriate or good or authentic to have the power of the right words for that. So I felt like sitting at home with 3 kids and trying to be cool. And by that time, so one thing was, I really wanted to use all the knowledge and all the power I have to make sure that sustainability finds a reason or a path or a channel. And sustainability in 2010, when I switched roles, was not what it is looking backwards or looking in the future or whatever. It was for me just something to make sure that I take everything I have to make my steps a little better with a less footprint as possible, or the best cooperative reach I have. So I founded Brands for Good, and Brands for Good was an additional service to all kinds of platforms. So it was Trade Show Munich, Trade Show Frankfurt, Trade Show Düsseldorf, Trade Show Hamburg. I tried to find a physical place, to find a reach for the personalities or for the brands who already do something. It could be individual car sharing, or by that time it was that, or it was the first roadmaps from brands we love.
Okay.
So, and that was the beginning. And because I was not able to finance myself with that kind of work, I had a supervisory job, which was a freelance job for Bench, because in that time, all people from England and Germany might remember Bench as the explosion street, where there was never an example like that, and I think until now, ever. So the retailers in Germany and in England asked the brand, which headquarter in Manchester, but in Germany or DACH region was the most sold market for them. And the retailers asked if there's an appropriate functional wear for the 2 seasons. So the wear, if we all remember what it was like a big collar and the big letters, etc. And the retailers asked, can we develop that one for a functional winter and summer collection? And they asked me if I would be the person for that.
Great.
So I started as a freelancer. First, just strategy, and then I took over like product and marketing and sales and everything which was directed to that. I was able to use all structure of bench in Manchester, so I used to work there twice a month.
Okay, wow.
The rest here, and then we also had a designer for Zurich, etc., etc. So that was quite long trying to implement a parallel bench.
Yeah.
Or trying to, it worked out quite a while, but then everything got bankrupt anyhow in bench. But that was quite a while, and that was where I take the experience from for the apparel industry, because before it was communication and sales, and the colleagues which I had at bench, which are still part of the industry everywhere, they were super knowledgeable, super intense of sharing work, and because I had small kids, we always used my flat to work there or in Manchester and so on. So it was an intense time, and parallel. There was on one side Brands for Good working for the trade shows, and without, unfortunately, any turnover, which is relevant, and the other thing was bench running it.
Yeah, so that's interesting. I was going to ask the experience of being an entrepreneur, but maybe not such a good one if it was tough to generate revenue at that time, generate income from your Brands for Good business. So maybe that was, I guess, maybe a little bit bittersweet. I'm sure the projects were super motivating and engaging,
and the people especially, and the people we work with. So in that time, and you interrupt me if I'm telling too many things.
No, it's
that's
good.
fine.
It's
So
great.
Brands for Good at a certain point was run together with my partner, which I was together by that time. So we were private and business partners. His name is Frankie, and we did that together for quite a while, because during bench we had all the presence on whether the trade shows, or also we used some festivals like winter sports or summer sports, wherever. And this was, of course, not delivering the turnover, but delivering something like a kind of passionate flame for everything we do in terms of business relations.
Yeah.
And the bittersweet thing was at a certain point that I was not able to bring it to that field of play where it is a collaborative agency which is taking care for your sustainability roadmaps, etc., etc. So the expertise which could have been out of that was not that thing. And after, so bring a long story short, and you can ask everything, but it was transferring this to my work at ISPO, which I joined in 2015 as one of the community managers. And in the community management sector of Messe Munich or ISPO, one part was sustainability, so I took Brands for Good as one of the partners to get this sustainability hub going on, which we all know now is one heart of that. So,
okay, interesting. Yeah, because I saw that you then moved working in that community role for ISPO, and I wondered how, because up until that point, your role had, let's say, been, or your roles had been either sales or marketing or some product as well when you were with bench, and then even though maybe some of the tasks were a little bit maybe similar, but you were moving to a very different business, being obviously an events business. So that must have been, how was that? I mean, that must have been a really amazing experience, like almost a completely different world to a certain extent, or?
So during that time at university in Cologne, the sports university, we had lots of event on a big scale, border week and so on. So having this kind of experience, moving people around, this was not really new. What was new, being in a corporate like Messe Munich, trying to be the flagship or milestone or the best platform as a global show in the world. So this is innovative, fast-moving, but still in a kind of corporate business. So the change in systems was more not to work for one brand where you try to optimize every kind of channel, every kind of business model, etc. So it was selling square meters, preparing that for a year.
Yeah.
So it had both sides at the beginning.
Sure. Yeah.
But working together with Toby Gribber and Markus Hefter and the team behind that was that you can share, of course it's not only square meter, because you set the stone for the brands to decide to exhibit at a show.
Yeah.
So you're deep into the strategy, you get out of collaboration the best ideas for the next platforms, which deliver the future ideas of our industry path. So everything in that on like ski touring summit, footwear, water sports, digitalization, thousands of things, and of course sustainability.
Yes.
So that drove all the passion in the right direction to get the best personalities out of, not the best, but the most innovative thinking personalities out of the brands, to make sure that I'm feeded in with the knowledge I need to transfer this together with the team to the best trade show ever. So that was quite fast the best idea I ever had.
Yeah.
So
great.
That was the move.
Okay. And what was in that role? What was the in your role at ISPO? What was the most difficult part of that for you? What was the thing that really challenged you the most?
I need to go down later here in Cambridge to see the guys in the eyes. For at a certain point, I was called the green extreme. For the green, when I started that role, I promised to myself I would not do one footstep without make sure that we have responsibility.
Yeah.
It is not on everything, of course, we know now, which is in concrete CO2, rubbish, etc. But it's on, do we really make sure that we do the best responsible thing out of it? And that was quite challenging because it felt like I'm annoying. Yeah. I do always repeat the same things. I did not really request business or disrupt business models, of course, but I was trying to request everything which is necessary. Not that I knew, but I wanted to ask the question: is that necessary, etc. Yeah. And the same thing, not on that scale on sustainability, but a little on the more or less same scale, was women in leading positions in the sporting good industry. How can we really provide a better path, better knowledge sharing, etc., etc.? So that brought me to sometimes a position where I really did not feel well. Yeah. In terms of, everything maybe.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, those two topics are obviously massive topics within our industry. I mean, sustainability is arguably the biggest topic influencing, I would say, pretty much everybody in our industry every day.
Luckily.
Yeah. Women in leadership is, still a big challenge. We were discussing a little bit, obviously, before we started recording, and, as you said, we're here today at the European Outdoor Summit with a couple of hundred leaders from the industry, and it's better than it was 10 years ago, I would say, but still the male-female ratio is I guess 80-20. I don't know what you think. It's probably around that. It must have been mentally challenging to kind of go through that period, kind of like you said, keep banging on the doors, and sometimes the door wasn't kind of opening, wasn't moving. So how did you deal with that? I mean, how, kind of mentally, how were you kind of able to keep fighting, to keep pushing? Because, it's when you keep banging your head against the wall, at one point you get a headache, right? So, how did you kind of get through that and still today be such a, let's say, advocate and a voice for the sustainability topic? So it's not like you've given up, you're still as strong, still fighting. So what is it that's kind of kept you going?
A combination, of course. And before I answer that one, I would love to send if you ask for the combination here of the delegates, and if you ask for how is the industry status and if everything on that, I had that discussion yesterday when it was on another summit in another field of our industry. If we have over-exaggerated thinking on we have to have a quote in board membership, etc., I do not really like it, because
Sure.
it's as if the opposite is taking
Yeah,
place.
yeah.
I saw
agree.
some LinkedIn things today where it feels like, okay, this is not how it should be either. And in between that, it was always my motivation to get this going for a different kind of visibility of straightforward thinkers. And this is independent from whatever. And I'm not saying that I'm like the super diverse knowledge. I'm not. I can't. I'm a generation where I'm with next Friday, 51. I sometimes I do not even understand what my kids are saying. And then if I try to settle what I'm thinking and where I come from and why it is, then okay-ish, let's say that. And the motivation behind is that if maybe on the generation I start, because the most wonderful colleagues in ISPO times, their parents were younger than mine. No, not mine, me.
Yeah.
So I was older than their parents,
Sure.
but they were eye-height colleagues
Yeah.
for everything we developed in that terms of, okay, trade show needs to change and we
Yeah.
need to be fast and so on. So having the motivation of not judging if it's male or female or something, then it feels easier to get the right mixture of passion and expertise out of it. And
Okay.
this is what gives me motivation. And this is what, if it comes, for example, to here, if we are on European Outdoor Summit and on the great personalities behind that, it's independent. If it's that or that. So this is always where I try to get as much
Okay.
distance in between as possible.
Yeah.
And of course, this green extreme thing was not nice.
Yeah.
And it feeds still today my imposter in a huge scale.
Okay.
And I still have that in terms of when I compare my knowledge to colleagues, or if I compare me being passionate and active against something which is well thought through, planned in advance, and so on. So in between that, I think the force that helps me tick is teamwork, but in an open, it could be critical, but as constructive as possible.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry that I'm not, but this is what helped me through, because
Sure.
there were always people in the industry or even as colleagues which were the backbone, because I trusted, even if they were like super critical, but
Yeah.
I knew that they were honest.
Yes.
So that's it.
Yeah.
And still so if I would have a recommendation for ourselves, there are so many young people, men or women, which would definitely change everything that feels now should change faster.
Yeah.
And this is not driven to sustainability, but to cooperative partnership and to the new ways people want to be treated and how we should change.
Absolutely. That's well.
Makes sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. It's I don't know whether this is a good thing or a bad thing, but I think from an outside perspective, and I guess this is the same for everybody, because we all, to a certain extent, have some level of imposter syndrome. But I think you're definitely perceived and seen as a leader within sustainability within the industry, and somebody that is, like I said, an advocate and an ambassador and a leader for helping us as an industry drive the agenda forward. So not that it's going to make any difference what I say, but it's you should also, I think, be proud about that you have been knocking on their door or banging your head against the wall, because it makes a difference for sure.
I thank you. It really feels wonderful. And to make sure that I get this on the right level for myself, I did not do that alone.
Yeah. No, sure. Sure.
It's always on having, because if you call me leader in sustainability, I would directly interrupt and say, no, there are people which know way more and they are right into detail. And having these, last week there was the Cascale conference, which is the followership from Sustainable Apparel Coalition. And I'm definitely not one of the leaders compared to those who really drive carbon programs, or comparing to Kathy Stevens from EOG, etc. But having exactly what you're saying, the driving mentality of bringing knots together, people together, processes together, trying to find the right collaboration for let's please think out of this small.
Exactly.
This is.
But I think for me, I'm sure there are lots of people that know maybe more about certain topics, but for me that doesn't necessarily make them a leader. I think it makes them an expert maybe, but I think leaders is somebody that's kind of showing the way, or not even showing the way, but encouraging transformation and change. And I think that's, for me anyway, that's kind of how I would see a leader on a topic like this. And I think you should and could definitely consider yourself to be that, for sure. And I guess moving then from ISPO to Sympatex, somehow that almost came full circle and almost underlined that focus and drive of sustainability, because I think when you joined, that was the primary part of your role, with storytelling, I believe, as well. So but again, it was quite different in terms of the fact that, up until that point, you'd worked for brands, you'd been a journalist, you'd worked for event businesses, and now you were working for a supplier, let's say, to those brands, an ingredient. So how was that transition? Why that change, and how did you find that change? What were those kind of early learnings that you had when you moved? Because I would imagine it's quite a different kind of world in terms of operating than what you'd experienced before.
And maybe let me start with how that transition happened, because taking care in terms of trade show, global responsibility, etc., for what was the ISPO role, when we needed to transfer everything away from square meters to a digital show. And what I learned in that time was we produced everything in a TV studio close to the trade show venue. And I wanted to prepare the 2 days for sustainability, and I wanted to find the right red threads with not only exhibitor-driven thinking, but also with the right personalities, brands, associations, ambassadors, authorities, etc. So driving that through everything was a wonderful experience, because I also had the chance to moderate that. So that was like giving birth to something which I always adored for that. And this is where also the podcast came from.
Yeah.
So, and seeing the red thread where the changing positions are, I would still ever underline, thinking 3 years backwards, that I'm a brilliant person for associations or platforms. What happened in having, during Corona, selling a digital show, I don't know if you know how we worked, but we worked like every time zone, 30 minutes, trying to get across what a digital showroom delivers for a huge value. And we did that like quite passionate, because we wanted to save everything we have in terms of this is our platform. And in that time, Sympatex was also one of my clients, and I pitched, and right away it was a question if I want to change sites for, okay, this is a good story, telling how you sell us what it is. And I think the changing moment for everything which an ingredient like Sympatex needs is right now a new value proposition and a new service chain. Not saying that the old one was wrong, so new is maybe the wrong word, but it's like the transition in which Sympatex is in right now, being wonderful product, having differentiations to all the competitors, etc., is like a wonderful market moment where they wanted to make use of everything, how I tick, how I feel, how I send information. And may I tell a funny story around that?
Please.
So the competitor, which is of course Gore, was one of the bigger partners for the platforms on ISPO and everything.
Sure.
So after my mom telling that I had my signature under the contract, I called Achim Löffler from Gore, telling him that and this is how I feel relationships, of course, and everything on.
Interesting.
Yeah, that was funny. So for now, I still have lags if it comes to all the systems, all the teams in Sympatex implemented over the last 8 years. In terms of CO2 consumption, etc., I'm, of course, representative how I need to be. But everything we use for getting a different footstep in terms of an ingredient, if it really goes down to the various HIC tools, etc., this is that we have the experts for that. But having the possibility to share as much knowledge as possible out of all industry aspects is perfect as an ingredient.
Yeah.
And this is why I made the transition for, I would love to change kind of thinking, eco-design and supply chain, beginning for designers, etc.
Yeah.
So that was the move.
Okay. And I think, was it this year or late last year that you then, we already touched on it, that you're now the co-CEO. So you're obviously doing a great job and obviously well respected internally, because otherwise that wouldn't happen. So why do you think they did give you that opportunity? What is it that you're doing, that you're bringing, that, you know, they see, okay, we see the value in what Kim does, and you know, we want to kind of give her that opportunity to take the co-CEO role. So, you know, what's your key success factor, if I had to put it in corporate corporate language?
So I struggle if I tell you, I want to tell you both sides of the story and both sides of the medal. It should have been earlier. It should have been 1 year earlier. That would mean now 2 years already.
Okay.
But I had a severe accident which brought me out of business for 5 months.
Okay.
So everything was postponed like quite a while. And since 1 year now, I am the original title. So it's a funny story, to be honest.
Funny stories are good.
It started with Chief Storytelling Officer, Chief Sustainability, Chief Sales, Chief Marketing and so on. And I realized, at the beginning, I chose CSMO for Chief Sales and Marketing. So in that, everything appeared like it's always somehow underrated under CEO.
Yeah.
So it's always the huge explanation behind that, because Rüdiger, co-CEO, has his title chosen for Chief Environmental Activist.
Okay.
So this is how we do it for Sympatex, because somehow all these acronyms or short letter words, forget it.
Yeah.
For the first conversation prior in beginning of 22, before this kind of break, there were already the discussions, and it was already clear that the right vision for Sympatex, what we can do for B2B credibility compared to other solutions. We take care for the best thing on what we as an industry could choose as monomaterial for recyclability, etc. is what we need, and transfer this to the outside to be as partnered up with the industry. So for this, I'm the best person.
Okay.
Hopefully. So this is what I transferred and what I proved, I guess, in bits. Of course, seeing now the market disruption of the industry and all the gaps, sometimes it feels a little crucial. But
it's a journey. No?
It's a journey. Exactly.
It's so maybe looking back over your career, who are the people that have influenced you the most?
Both ways.
Good and bad. Why not? Maybe it's difficult to mention the people that have influenced you badly, but
it's of course not the name, but it's the role and the example, because the heavily professional, wonderful, I still think of, are not only exceptional leaders. Of course, if judging on the hierarchies, if judging on this one, it's one part to give you an answer, but this is not what I'm willing to, because the most exceptional ways were if you are supported in your intuition.
Yeah.
So it could be a leader, it could be a moment, it could be conversations with retailers or those who are really in a crisis but still stay in their values. The other way is judging on people, being really harmful in terms of energy for your field of play, not taking care of... it's not the superficial answer in terms of not taking care of sustainability or this is not what I mean, but it's more or less taking care of... Moral is not the right word either. What is it? There's only a small path or a small space where we all allow each other to take time for each other, especially So this is why I really adore that you asked me for being here and asked all the questions, because then I can share so much. But in my daily life, I always have to judge quite straight, do I have the capacity right now?
Yeah.
And getting the feeling from others that they are not really taking care in terms of open eyes, listening on somehow, does not necessarily be intelligent, but something.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So this is what I really don't like, and I experienced. If you stay to your principles, and because it makes no real sense for me.
Yeah. Well, excellent. No, that's. Well, normally I get names as in positive names, but I think what you're talking about is behaviours actually on both sides.
Do you need names? I could give you names.
Well, certainly for positive, yeah. But I think it's a really interesting way to look at it. It's the behaviours from the people, good or bad, that.
So it could be one person.
Yeah,
to be honest.
Yeah, for sure. That have that kind of positive or negative influence on you, and I think that's a really interesting way of looking at it. But I'll push you though for maybe one name or just, it doesn't have to be a name. You know, when you think about your career and the fact that you're sitting here today in the position that you are, is there somebody that stands out and like, oh yeah, they were a really positive influence for me? And maybe there's not.
No, it is, of course it is. So I'm not able to deliver one, because there were 2, 3, 5-ish, but one definitely is Rüdiger, which I run the company with, because otherwise that would not happen.
Yeah.
We change a lot of things towards how can the future for an ingredient or for the industry or for whatever be. In all the ISPO times, apart from like super close working together with Toby and Marcus, which had their influence, it's definitely Mark Held.
Okay.
Together with Katie.
Yeah.
And all the team around Katie.
Yeah. Okay.
So this is and Arne worked with them as well. So if the answer would more be the team-related thinking around personalities like Mark, who were responsible and behaving. Yeah. Which then comes, and this would be for every station in my work life, as mentioned. Florian Grail and Marcus Lukai for Nytro Snowboards, and the visionary or the basic thinkers behind that was Tommy DeLago and Sepp Ardold.
Okay.
So they founded the brand, and they are innovators by that time, and still. And of course, in the water sports business there, and so this can continue. Yeah. And of course, all the athletes, which I had the chance to work with in various things, always. Yeah.
Great. Okay, perfect.
Thanks for asking.
No problem. So, when you think about our industry, the outdoor industry or the sporting goods industry, however we want to define it, what would you say what's the best thing about the industry, but also what's the worst thing, or what's the best and the worst thing that you see in our industry?
I need to find the right channel for my very indifferent thoughts on that. So it could be, I tried to do different levels. Superficial, we sell a dream. We sell something which delivers always the picture of protect your playground because you use it. And on the other hand, we finance our own salary because we sell. Yeah. And we contribute to overconsumption. We use hazardous substances and our supply, blah. So, of course, in different levels, and I take care for all the business I do, but still this is...
but that's the reality. I think that's that's a perfect answer, because I think it's the other side of the same coin in reality, and I think and that's why actually it's such a difficult, complex topic to move forward, because I think only can we really move forward if we keep investing in finding better solutions to fixing these problems, and we can only do that if we are running profitable businesses. So this is why it's such a difficult a difficult challenge.
And that is why I was asking myself for the different levels, because it sounds superficial and obvious, protect our playground, but
but I don't think it's so obvious.
And if you go deeper on that, last week we had that discussion. If we talk on CO2 consumption and the footprint, if you take a factory in an overheated area, and you need to take care of not overheat in the factories for the workers, what does that mean for the electricity household of the factory?
Yeah.
The CO2 footprint explodes.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
So how?
Yeah.
And so on.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. So what's the most valuable piece of advice you've ever received? And it can be professionally or not, whatever.
Oh, I ever received or I would give out?
Well, we'll come to that. It's okay. What you've received, first of all. We'll come to what you give out.
This is for the definition of valuable when and how. I'm looking back, 51, as I said, it's a question of life stations, factors, and so on. So the best for right now was, which is not really, I need to cope with this point of moment where it's as a leader and having the responsibility, it's not always appropriate to really share everything, I think. And this, of course, leads to the moment where, on one hand, it's Kim who says, like, let's share, let's go, and there's thousands of tons of energy. Yeah. But of course, on the other side, this is an advice which is from a person which is not working with me, but which is taking care for like systems and also business leadership, etc., which definitely makes sense to judge on this very, very sensitive. So I would love to be on the other side, but I know this is an advice which I need to take care for to make really sure that I lose not too much energy, because not all the people like reflect what I expect.
Yeah. And I think also it's sometimes the danger is if you have, you said earlier on about 10 ideas, 2 of them were good. If you have 10 ideas, and if you're communicating that, the risk is that they all get a bit lost, whereas if you're, you can be focused on 1 or 2 or whatever, even 9 is better than 10, right? At least then you can make the message stronger and clearer, and then it's easier for people to understand and then move forward with. So, but that's interesting. Yeah, it's, I guess it's communication at the end of the day. It's kind of being able to be clear in your mind about what you want to say and then how you say it, and again, it's leadership. It's bringing people along with you. It's
and it's interesting because I wanted to point out another thing, but maybe this is exactly what, if you reflect that way, what I wanted to say is there is the energetic and passionate and emotional Kim, where on the other side, it's enough if this is like only a shortage, a smaller percentage of sharing whatever is. It's not necessarily ideas. It's more energy. Energy transfer and anything.
Yes.
So if I see all the leadership things we share or we read on LinkedIn, it's vulnerability, everything behind that, which also leads others to be braver if you share what. So,
for sure.
On the other hand, in the world where I live, it's not always that appropriate. So the advice which you asked me for was take care of what you share.
Yeah.
Because it could be in the vulnerability I would love to see from all the people I work with is not really appropriate to all worlds I share.
Yeah. I think like everything, it's a balance, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's because I think one thing I've noticed actually about doing the podcast is that the people that are the most authentic, somehow vulnerable and are open, and you were very open. You talked about the fact that there are periods where you have some kind of imposter syndrome. I think it's that type of openness and vulnerability and authenticity that people are attracted to because it's believable. because otherwise, whether it's LinkedIn or any type of social media, we all know, it's just showing that everything's perfect and shiny and nice, and everybody knows that that's just not the reality. So I think getting that balance right, of course you can't always be like that, because then it's a bit heavy on people, and but no, that's really interesting. That's really interesting.
And the other advice, which I do not really, so this is something I can, this is super clear for me, and I can feel from the energy where this advice is worth taking care of, because it always has to do with the communication, but more with the energy management, which is on my side, because I need to be the leader.
Yes.
And the other thing, and this is why I said it's an age-driven thinking process. It is, if you want to be a leader and responsible for the people's development, it's always super good to take enough time to understand. Yeah. And of course, people like, I think, normal in a leadership, and especially then kids and other things happening, you need to make sure that your time makes sense. But this is the advice which I loved, and this is already a while ago, and now exceptionally for the situation I'm in. If you have this kind of knowledge, or what's the right word? I like the English word. Ability to feel. And this is, of course, always on the other side of the story, but if you have the ability to feel, let the people know, because then they trust.
It's that empathy.
Empathy thing.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's also, if you have the empathy combined together with business intelligence.
Yes, absolutely.
This is so valuable.
Yeah.
And take care for that, because that needs maybe more time than professionalizing the Excel file for 30 times.
Yeah. So, yeah, absolutely. Okay, great.
And this is already answering the last question. That would be my recommend.
Okay, but well, I'm going to ask for 3, so that's just one. But one question before we get there. So you've been very open about the fact that on Friday or next Friday you're turning 51. But let's imagine that maybe next Friday you were going to turn 71 or whatever age. But anyway, today was going to be your last day. You were going to retire from the industry, walk away into the sunset. What would be the message that you would want to leave your team with on your last day?
I guess there will never be a last day, because I plan to really continue loving this, what I do. In terms of changing roles, this could be the better picture for me.
Okay.
If you want me to leave somewhere, or do you want to see the retirement thing?
It doesn't matter.
Whatever.
You decide.
I judge. Okay, so I take both. For leaving the team would be take care for the values and the moral you stand for. So say what you do and do what you say. And this is not discussable. Mm-hmm. Of course, we need to find proper ways of doing business right. But if this does not work, leave if you cannot cope.
Yeah.
For the retirement thing, I would love to be in the position by that time when things change in terms of I take care for the kids of my kids of my kids of my kids or whatever. I hope that we delivered the right tools to somehow help that it's not as bad as it looks like right now. Mm. Please use every path you find, and I probably will excuse our generation. Yeah, that's a good one. So let's finish up. So the goal of the podcast is really to help anybody working within the sports and goods industry or that would maybe like to work within our industry on how they can develop in this industry. So if you're thinking about providing advice to future leaders of our industry, what 3 pieces of advice would you give them? Again, a comment first. Sorry.
No problem.
It would also be in like this I hide to those who are willing to leave right now because they are too tired. I hope your podcast helps those people to stay.
Okay.
Which are relevant for us because they are a lot right now, which are willing to leave because it feels like too tired or too slow or too whatever. What I would love to have these people which come from wherever. Ideally, we tackle those who are passionate and maybe working in different fields of industries like entertaining, etc. Use all the values which you already experienced, and if you have the feeling that you are not professional enough or not experienced enough, or the outdoor industry is such a family and you are not part of it, or whatever we often hear, leave that away. Because every kind of professionality, expertise, character is valuable to share in a highest scale possible.
Yeah.
Because everything else makes no sense. If you arrive, or if you want to do something, or if you want to see others responsible for your development, this is the wrong way.
Yeah.
It does not make any sense. So if there is whoever, use the 100.
Yeah. That's
time management, mobility concept, etc. questionable, reasonable. But for everything which is shareable, where you want to have impact questions or whatever, use everything you have in terms of. Otherwise, you shouldn't be there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That's a really good one. But it's interesting what you said there about the fact that, you know, some people are tired and think because things are not moving quickly, and I hear that as well, especially because of my day job in recruitment. But I also think that somehow, I guess my answer to that is always two. Firstly, I think it's always the same wherever you are. I think, you always have the view that, it's not, if you're passionate about something, it's not moving quick enough, moving fast enough. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. But also secondly, I think if we talk about topics like sustainability, and if people, I know younger generations within our industry are frustrated that we're not moving fast enough. But I would say that I think we're moving faster than a lot of other industries. So, be careful, because the grass is not always greener. And also help us, don't, as you're a perfect example of somebody that, was called the Green Monster? No.
Green Extreme.
Green Extreme.
So this is just my translation, because the German one would not be understandable.
Okay, but I get it. But, you had that, and yet here you are. And that's what we need, and that's leadership. So, people shouldn't give up.
Thank you.
So but so anyway, we'll finish there, because now it's getting a bit intense. But thank you, Kim, for your time and for being so open. It's been a super interesting discussion.
Thank you.
And I'm sure that the audience will have a lot of great insights that they can take away. So yeah, thank you very much, and let's enjoy the rest of the Outdoor Summit.
Thank you so much.
Take care. I hope you enjoyed my chat with Kim as much as I did. If you did, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Thanks for your support, and I look forward to seeing you soon for our next episode.